I'll get us started. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor Healy's March 28th, 2025 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body, this meeting of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website, townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner: by seeing the instructions on top of the agenda on the town's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. All votes are roll call votes. We'll start with the minutes for the January 20th meeting and the January 22nd subcommittee.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written for January 20th and January 22nd.
I'll second.
Discussion, the January 20th minutes state that Fred, it states that you and I were notified that Christina had submitted her resignation. I think we also need to include that we were sharing that she submitted it. She submitted that information to the town clerk.
Okay.
Because I think that was the relevant piece of information. And then under reports, and Chris, I'm glad you're here. In the last line of the first paragraph, it says Mr. Rembold said the template used for the CPA grants can be repurposed for this project. This was related to reports. I think that at that point, we also shared that what the schedule would be. Does that sound correct to you, Chris? That the first report would be due in April for the first quarter?
I don't recall the schedule.
Okay. I mean, that is the schedule.
Would you like to add?
I would like to amend the minutes to reflect that that's scheduled as that.
Schedule is first week in April or first part of April?
It's quarterly, and so the first report will be due after the first quarter in April. And then further down, when Chris is reporting on the town side of the experience of the ADU project, it said going forward, Chris recommends having a housing coordinator handle as much as possible. And I wasn't sure that that was actually correct. I did not recall that to be the case.
I think I took it off the tape.
Okay.
But Chris, if you care to comment.
I don't remember the exact wording. I'd go to the tape.
All right. We can leave it if that's what it says. I just didn't recall it and didn't think that was really something we're talking about. All right. Fred, would you be open to amending your motion?
Yes, I would. I offer to amend my motion as noted by those three changes submitted to town clerk. Adding the schedule for the reports and checking on the housing coordinator.
Thank you.
I'll second the amendments.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, Joe?
I'm sorry, I can't comment on the 22nd subcommittee because I was not there. So I can't really vote on that part of it.
Would you prefer to vote on the 20th and then the 22nd separately?
Yes.
Voting just on January 20th, Garfield?
Yeah, aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And Ananda, aye. Voting on the subcommittee, Peter,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
Ananda, aye. Garfield,
Garfield was.
Well, remember, I wasn't on that. That's why we were voting separately.
great.
That was a trick question.
Hmm.
Do it two ways. People could abstain or we could, but that's fine. We'll do it that way. Great. Moving on to reports. Actually, before we move on to reports, I did just want to note one, for the general public, one correction on the agenda under old business ADU program. It references an RFP draft. And there is no RFP for the ADU program. There's a program overview, and that's what we'll be discussing. Moving back to reports, the RFP has been issued for the developer RFP has been issued. Chris, that got out last week, right?
Also on the website now.
Great, thank you, Bill. Bill, we had approved some funding for additional advertising. I think there's still a balance on that.
Okay.
I think you were the one who requested it, so I just wanted to make sure you know it's there and you could use it for whatever you were thinking.
Okay.
Some of that has to go for the mandatory posting in the paper of record.
So, you know what balance is after that?
$149, I believe.
What's left? Okay.
But that may include the paper of record.
Okay. So
The Berkshire Eagle paper of record RFP advertisement is already posted, not paid for. But if you wanted to do others in the shopper's guide or additional graphic ads, the basic text has been completed.
Is the one, what did you say, Fred, 149 adequate for the Eagle ad, or do we need to approve additional funds?
That question to me, Ananda, I don't have the
Yeah,
bill
you
in
don't
front of me. No,
Okay.
sorry.
It just crossed my mind because the Eagle ads can be pricey. Okay. Select board presentation overview. Fred, did you have anything in mind that you wanted to share with the?
I wanted to record that you and I appeared before the select board as the request of the town manager and chair of the select board to present an overview of the Affordable Housing Trust and to update activity on Prosperity Way. We were welcomed and they were very attentive and were very interested in our both all of our programs and in Prosperity Way. And
Were there any particular questions, Fred, that the board wanted addressed and anything we should know concerning the discussion?
There were, I think there were 3 questions that came up. There were a couple questions that, like Eileen had a question related to the grant funding that was used on the infrastructure and what was used on the foundations, and Chris clarified that for Eileen. Vivian Orlowski had a question that Steve suggested was more appropriate to come to one of our meetings that was related to our ADU program, and she can ask it if she comes to one of our meetings. Eric Gabriel was really interested in information about the application process for Prosperity Way and an update on where that process stood. And Carolyn from Habitat was on Zoom and was able to provide a real-time update, which was great. And it was a positive update on how things are looking. And then Phil had a question about what the thinking was behind building a frame house. And so Carolyn was also able to share information with the select board and those present about that. But there weren't a lot of questions directed at the trust, actually.
Thank you.
Yep. Fred, did you want to provide an update on the Prosperity Way open house dates?
I do, and I wish I had them. So Habitat is having two open houses at Prosperity Way. Everybody is welcome. They will be this Saturday, February 21st from 10 o'clock to noon at 385 North Plain Road in the Prosperity Way. Tours will be available for all of the Habitat homes. Also, on Thursday, February 26th, from 2 to 4, they will also have an open house. To remind everybody, there are presently 6 houses under construction in the first phase. 5 of these houses are 3 to 4 bedrooms, and one is a smaller frame house. So that's February 21st, 10 to noon, February 26th, 2 to 4.
Great.
Yeah.
Garfield?
Yeah, can I go back for a second? I think that to me, it feels like it might be important to mention Jim Bailey's comments. And I know we had discussed it at that meeting, at the select board meeting, but maybe so everyone else who may be listening in or was not available could hear that and be clear on what happened and the explanation.
Jim spoke for 3 minutes. He used his 3 minutes primarily to speak again about the questions he has or concerns he has about the infrastructure phase of the project and foundations component of the Habitat side of the project and the town grants and procurement process. He mentioned something about having concerns about the small amount of funds. I mean, it's not nothing, but in the large scope of the budget of the project, the relatively small amount of funds from the Smart Growth grant, it sounds like it's his belief that that should have gone out to bid. It sounded like from his comments that it was a change of work order. And Steve just addressed that those were not select board issues and there was no further discussion.
Right. Well, that's why I kind of wanted to note that and ask that maybe we make some mention of his displeasure and his thought of being lied to, and we can make that clear that it wasn't the case, or anyone else might be thinking that that's the case. We'll find out that it's not the case.
Clear,
You know?
the Affordable Housing Trust, I mean, those all similar to the select board, that part of the process is not the purview of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, I'm all right with that. I just want, people listening that they do. And he was quite upset. And I thought the accusations of being lied to needed to be clear that was not the case.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was given an appropriate audience and specific questions were answered. I believe Chris responded in ones that to a specific question that it wasn't.
Fred, I mostly just think that this is not our business at this point to be discussing.
I'm simply reporting what was said at the time.
Yeah. I would like to move on to Rising Ball Field we have two kind of chunky agenda items, and I want to make sure that we have time to get into them. So moving on to the Rising Ball Field, our task tonight is really twofold. One is to review the information gathered so far. So I think, Bill, we haven't had a chance to review the updated survey results, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then Fred also put together a summary report.
Right.
So the first is just to look at that information together, and then the second is
Well, Bill, I sent this to you with the intention that we have a combined thing, and you reviewed this and
I
had
did.
made some additions.
Yes.
Is there more that you wanted to put in?
No, no, I just
Okay.
had those changes. Otherwise, I
And
thought,
this is a combined report that Bill and I together worked on.
okay. I thought that Bill had previously shared the survey results.
I have. They're on the website too.
Yeah, and so the last time we looked at the survey results in the fall, my understanding was that the result of that was that we wanted to collect more and that more results were collected. Yeah.
Yes.
So we haven't, this body has not looked at the survey results since more results were collected.
I don't know if it was more results. We ran the survey from the beginning of October to the end of November, and then I cut it off.
So I'm just trying to understand because the last meeting we had in the fall when we did look at them, the upshot was we wanted to collect more responses. Did more responses come in after that?
Not many.
Okay.
Nothing that's going to change the data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So basically the first part of our task is to look at all of that information. The second part of our task is to set out what we want the process to be from here and what we think the timeline is we want to be on from being at this point to working towards releasing an RFP.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought we would start by taking 5 minutes for Fred and Bill to share out from the report is available for people to look at. The survey results are available on the website, but for you both to just walk us through that, and then we'd open discussion about what we want the process to look like from here.
Can you hear that on the screen, Fred?
Working on it.
You can go to the website and share that if you want.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
It's better when they are a
appropriate?
little larger.
Little
Look bigger would be good.
It's huge on my screen, I gotta tell you. So,
Okay, it's not huge in mine, but I can see it better than before.
all right. This was intended to be a summary report that collected a lot of the information that we previously put together. In other words, kind of taking some of the written data that we had assembled during the process and putting it in a report summary that so the first section, the introduction here talks about the foundation, uh, why we are doing this, what's going on. The paragraph starting that says Risingdale
Mm-hmm.
talks about the actual elements of the purchase and of the parcel itself, including, the assets, the zoning requirements, what's, that it was purchased under Community Preservation Act funds and therefore would be qualified as affordable housing. So those are basically pulling together things that we had already shared with the public. From there's a narrative summary under the community meetings heading about the two community input sessions that we held in the fall. And it's trying to put it in narrative form, the ideas that were talked about, what was the primary aspects there, and taking in a lot of the data that came from the surveys as well about what people's preference was for type of houses and home ownership options. And I think this captures it fairly well. I think that a narrative gives it a little bit more flavor and context, if you will, while being more, shall we say, subjective than just a raw data there. Um, and then the final part talks about the process and schedule, and then some issues and questions. Bill, do you want to talk a little bit more about the survey and the survey results in this section?
Um, yeah, it seemed like people generally wanted a combination of things. They wanted diversity in the population. They wanted both home ownership and rental opportunities. Um, General consensus seemed to be tiny houses or small townhouse type buildings. Um, wasn't part of the survey, but I think a lot of people wanted to keep the trees. Uh, it was sort of part of the survey in terms of the general um, layout of the land, so that it was keep the pathways for the animals and that sort of thing. Um, but in general, I think a mix of home ownership and rental seemed to be come through in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Fred?
Of course you may.
Bill, in going through those surveys, was it your sense that the responding parties were from the local neighborhood, or were they individuals who were interested in actually living in the homes?
A combination of both. I think the majority was people that lived in the area or in the neighborhood. But there were quite a few people that said, yes, I would be happy to live here.
Fred, if
Just
you want to stop sharing your screen, I have the um, survey results from the website and I can share that. And you have a really nice summary of that question, Bill. I mean, at least I think I can.
By the way, Fred, thanks for the report. Nice compilation of everything.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know. For some reason, I'm having problem with screen sharing. Anyway, what I am
well, I
looking
can try if you want.
at, it looks like it says 28% of the respondents live in the neighborhood, 28% live in Housatonic. Um,
And there was a question um, that whether someone lived in a Berkshire County or something, and I just took that out because it was skewing the whole data.
yeah.
It became the biggest. Oh,
Yeah.
Can you see that?
there we go. Yes.
There you go.
Is that what you're looking for, Ananda?
That
Yeah.
is what I'm looking for it. So
And
Peter
you could make it a little bigger.
and red
Well,
section.
let's see if I can make it bigger.
Oop,
Whoops, I
got the
lost
wrong
it.
thing.
Uh,
There you
There
go.
we go.
Let me get rid of this here and make this bigger.
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 Bigify it.
Is it bigger now or not yet?
Not yet.
Well, see what I have to do on my screen is make it down there, go back to Zoom, screen sharing. Oh, where is it? It's tucked up behind there. Uh, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen there. Hold on just one second.
Oh, while Fred does that, is there anything else
Tried
you
it,
want to
so
highlight, Bill?
Not off the top of my head. No.
Okay. I'm just noticing that
that's as big as I could make it.
I'm finding the answer to the kind of priorities is useful to review. Chris, go ahead. You're muted.
Thanks. When in the question about the style of homes, were there any example images of what you meant by the different styles? Or was it just a text question?
It was a text. They're all just text questions.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some of the responses, and I think it's useful to see that the priorities for the project design and neighborhood fit are green spaces, new homes that match the scale of nearby buildings, and the project resembles nearby buildings.
Yeah.
Um, and then it ranks some other features in order of importance, and the number one feature is safety, including traffic flow, parking, and lighting. Shared spaces, gardens, playgrounds, rooms to meet, and buildings use less energy and are good for the environment.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Garfield.
Um, do we have any of this that is targeted toward the Black and Brown communities of Great Barrington?
Not
In
just,
other words, do we have a way to reach out, or do we have a way to make sure that that population is getting this information? I know it's not going to be the same as all, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And
Fred and Bill, that was the subcommittee process with you and Jen Goey. Is that something you all discussed and looked at in your distribution of the survey?
not really.
we talked to Jen about expanding the idea of community because I think the first people who responded on the survey were the immediate neighbors or some local folks in Housatonic. And I was hopeful that we could expand it beyond that to the greater Great Barrington community at large.
I mean, it did go out through the hospital.
Yeah,
Um,
we tried a few different ideas that Jen suggested.
And you didn't, in the end, the survey didn't collect demographic data on who was responding, but beyond whether they live in the neighborhood or Housatonic.
no.
We don't know what the demographics of the respondents are. I will say, like, I did receive the survey link through other community like emails.
Mhm.
Um, so that was positive. So like maybe this is a good place to let us transition a little into the second part of the discussion, which is what do we need our process to be from here, which could include collecting more data, right? I think where I'd like us to get, and if it takes more than tonight, that's fine, but where I'd like us to get is that we have a report back to the CPC that where we can share what our process is going to look like and what we think our timeline is going to look like.
Mhm.
I put up on the screen some of the issues and questions that occurred to us. That some of those issues that are there, and I think one of the things that we heard from the neighborhood particularly was the density or the number of dwelling units there, and other kinds of issues there. I think before we go forward, we need to sort of kind of figure some of that stuff out of in general where we're headed with this. These are the issues.
Well, let me harken back again, if I may. Will this be available? Do we have someone who we can get the Spanish community involved or knowing what these are? Is there someone that do we even have anything that says, whatever you would say in Spanish, welcome, and that kind of stuff, and come and we have someone you can speak to or something like that. I think it's important. There's some Spanish folks out there, I'm sure, don't have a lot of money who would love one of these kind of this house.
Mhm.
And if they can't really read it or understand it, then they're not going to come forward.
Joe?
Oh, I just in terms of process, I think we mentioned this at one point, the question of whether we should get feedback from the planning board.
We did.
To me, I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's, you know, it's just another source of information.
So I think my question about that is what is the function of that feedback since the planning board has an official role in the process? What's the function of feedback on this end?
So, I think, we have the, I guess, Prosperity Way, situation where they came in late in the process and had feedback where they wanted to modify it, or they suggested modifying it. Um, I don't know. I mean, they have the master plan, right? So the
We all have the master plan.
yeah, but it's like more in there. I mean, it's the select board and the planning board are, more in touch with the master plan. So um I think it's useful to ask them like that question of like, what do you think would be the most useful for this master plan?
Peter?
One of the questions of the survey was, should local qualifying residents be given priority? And uh, unless we are designated a seasonal community, my understanding is once you have CPA funds, we can't restrict applicants for the housing to local residents. And maybe I'm addressing my question to Chris, if there, or anyone else who knows the answer. But my understanding was that that would be impermissible.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, the town's obligated to follow fair housing law no matter what we're doing or how we're funding it.
And Chris, am I right that if we are a seasonal community, something that the Affordable Housing Trust has written to the board and suggested we ought to be, at that point, we would in fact be able to at least have municipal workers and first responders, they would have priority. Is that your understanding as well?
There is a possible tool that's correct. That is correct, Peter, that the town could hold year-round housing restrictions for so-called essential workers. Those are municipal or state or county employees. However, you see the regulations are written such that it says you still must comply with fair housing laws. So I'm not sure what yet that means, but you're correct. The principle is correct, Peter.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm hearing Garfield is suggesting that there's more data to collect at this survey phase. And Joe is also basically saying there's more data to collect from the planning board. I'll throw out my view on the planning board. I think that the planning board has a defined role in the process of in the housing process, period.
Mhm.
And I just don't know that that it's helpful to make that unclear by asking for feedback on a project that doesn't exist yet. When like we do have access to the priorities of the master plan, and it's also our job to interpret them and interpret them while weighing the needs of the community and the neighborhood. So that's just my 2 cents on that one. Joe.
So, I mean, I'm envisioning that the process will have a point at which we say like, hey, soliciting proposals, right? And and so at that point we will be locked into like a rubric or a criteria, and we'll be locked into like whatever's in that set of criteria. Then you I guess we pick one, then you take that to planning board. They critique it on like a technical level. But like in the past we kind of said like, but you don't have the planning board doesn't have sort of like editorial discretion on it. Like they can't say like, hey, I don't like this the kind of buildings you picked for this proposal, you know. Uh
Well,
and
I think that the planning board comes in when like that we release the art, like it is our job
yes.
to decide what we want, it is our job to decide what is the appropriate fit for the town's needs on that property and distill that into an RFP. The developer's job, it like once it gets to the developer, they have to follow through on like the existing process with the planning board, but we don't actually have a direct, like we're not,
But we pick the RFP, right?
we pick the developer, yeah, and we define the terms of the RFP.
So okay, so we're saying like we mentioned tiny houses, but I think we're thinking more like cottages, right? So
I don't think we know
so
what we're
well
Yeah.
exactly, and that's what I'm saying. So if you do RFP and then somebody comes and says, I am the premier builder of tiny homes, or the premier builder, I can do a really good job of building cottages. We are now making a decision for the town that is is relevant to the master plan, that's relevant, and then like and then the planning board can uh modify that. It just we're not architects, you know.
No,
Well,
but
actually, I
I'm not an
am.
architect.
But
Oh
um
yeah, sorry. You are the architect, but the rest of us aren't.
but
Um,
Joe, like we don't have a project to put before the planning board, and the planning board process is about concrete projects. So that's all I'm saying, and then I'll hand it to Fred, and if you want to come back, Joe.
I would like to remind this board that writing in my capacity as co-chair, sent a letter to the chair of the planning board, inviting the members of the planning board to our two community input meetings. And I believe if they wanted to come or wanted to contribute at that point, that was the appropriate time to come in and offer what they would like there. And I did not hear anything back from the chair of the planning board. So,
Chris?
Thanks for raising the question, Joe. And then I think Ananda's response was right on. It's a little bit difficult for the planning board to get involved so early on because eventually they would be required to review a project, and so um, sometimes that can be seen as prejudging something, and so it can get tricky. But maybe what this committee would be open to doing is once you have a draft RFP, sharing that with the select board and with the planning board and giving them some time to comment on that. Presumably the RFP is developed based on your survey, based on your community meetings, possibly based on an engineer's feasibility report, and then you have an RFP. And maybe that's what is then shared.
Uh,
So
I've heard the chair of the planning board say many times that their role is to set the table, not to serve the dinner or not to, I don't know what metaphor she used, Chris, but basically they feel that the planning board bylaws set the table and others come in and use those tools, if you will, to uh, build something. And I think that community is enhanced that way. I think that it gives us a level of variety and input that we don't have one perspective, but many, many perspectives that lead to a more synthesized result.
I'm pretty satisfied. That's fine.
So I'd like to spend maybe 5 more minutes on this so that we have time to work on the ADU and try to move us in a direction. So I hear there's a couple of clear steps. There's an engineer feasibility study that still needs to happen. The work that we need to do is we actually have to look at this data and decide like how to interpret it and what direction we want to go with the RFP before we get to drafting an RFP. Are we talking are we talking about duplexes? Are we talking about clusters? Like how are we going to interpret the data that we've collected so far? And particularly, I think like how does that interact with affordability, right? Um, and then there's this additional question that Garfield has raised about making sure that the data we've collected is including data from Spanish speaking community members and other Black and Brown community members. So this is not all getting done by June, which was our original kind of timeline. I think that that's fine. But I do think we want to get clear enough on what we think our process is that we'll be able to communicate that out to the CPC, for example, but also to citizens in general. So what's the openness and willingness to work on collecting some more data?
Can I just maybe either correct or add something to what you said as far as me wanting to get that information from Black and Brown communities? I also wanted to make sure that they were able to interpret that information. In other words, was it in their native tongue to read and understand? Or do we have someone to?
I did understand that. I didn't
Okay,
articulate that
thank
well,
you.
that making sure that the survey is actually going out in Spanish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there's a limit to how much the survey is going to show us. And I think that until we have maybe some more examples to show, people aren't going to get enthused about it. The people aren't going to think about it as a potential project. I think that we, as a community, get kind of overwhelmed by surveys that are awfully important to the people who propose them. Excuse me, I wish I had a cough button, but um,
Peter?
So I have a question, and to me, the survey is interesting. It's a data point. Another data point would be to go out, I would think, to 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 speak with the individuals, entities that might participate in the construction of these homes. Because so much of this has to be driven by what is actually feasible given the economics of building homes. So, should we be hearing from potential RFP bidders about uh, are townhomes more
Right,
economically
market.
feasible than what the market is going to be? Because ultimately, a survey could ask us to design a castle, but we really can't afford to build a castle. And I'm wondering if we can address that point.
Joseph?
Yeah, I was kind of along the same lines. I don't know, do people think that the charrette process with the Housatonic school was that positive? And do we want to try moving on to that stage? So like, and so that's kind of like getting at sort maybe some of the like the asking for expertise or different perspectives. Like, should we try to do something like that?
Invite some potential respondents to the RFP to discuss? Is that what you?
I didn't actually go to the charrette for the Housatonic school, but like I guess the RFP came out of that. It, I don't know if somebody else who's involved with that can
This
speak
is
about it.
Chris, just briefly. So, the Houstonic Improvement Committee held some charrettes regarding like 426 Park Street, former Cook's Garage, and Houstonic School as well. But what we knew going into that was sort of what Peter's asking now. What's feasible? What does the financial development project budget look like?
Mm.
Though there were some things that were more or less known going in, and then the Houstonic Improvement Committee asked questions. Okay, knowing what we know on this level, what could we see? So I think maybe Peter's question comes before your question.
Okay, makes sense.
So I put my hand up somehow, whatever. I think that I think that there are some parameters. I think we do know a lot about this. We have the site, we have the zoning, we have the neighborhood, we have the data from the survey. And I think there's a lot of stuff that kind of build the box, if we will, that this is going to be in. We also know that it's going to be affordable housing, and I think we've learned a lot from Prosperity Way in terms of what to build and what we don't want to bite off. I'll say, I don't want to bite. I'll make this personal. I don't want to bite off a 20 or 30 unit project again. I think that we would be better off having a project that fits into the community. I think we need to consider this as an infill project, which is what the master plan describes building on this sort of site and is the basic foundation there. The neighborhood is while the immediate houses are single families, there are a number of duplexes and up the street a number of houses that are actually quads or larger townhouse style apartments there. So I think we don't. It's not a blank sheet. Is my message. We have a lot of stuff that we know for this box, and we may not have the exact shape of it right now, but we have the parameters.
Uh, Peter, and then I'm gonna suggest a process forward.
I'll be quick. When we are talking about this project, and please don't shoot me, uh, we ought to consider that we might get a seasonal community designation, which would permit on a rental or sale basis to expand our definition of affordable housing from 100% AMI to 250% AMI. So when we are talking to potential partners in the building of these projects, the what could be spent on these structures and the individuals that could afford to live there might be significantly greater. So we have two paths to go down, and I anticipate we will be a seasonal community, and therefore what we mean by, Fred just mentioned affordable housing, what we mean by that could change dramatically soon.
Oh, you won't get my vote for it.
That's okay.
I'm not asking for your vote, Fred. I'm saying what the law would permit and what the town could vote for.
Chris?
Thanks. I just want to, Peter, because the property was purchased with CPA funds, which is a different enabling act than the Affordable Homes Act, we're still dealing with 100% AMI unless that act is amended. We can talk more about it, but it's not a fait accompli that the definition of affordable for the site changes.
Okay.
I also think that we don't need to solve all the problems of housing
Yep.
in the whole town.
Also, we um we have another large task tonight that is time sensitive, so I would like to move us out of this discussion into a potential path forward. So I think that I do think we need to be looking at a proposed process that gets us from here to a released RFP. And we've heard a few different components of that tonight. Chris, I think, is really helpful suggestion that we focus on getting to a draft RFP to get that to the select board and the planning board, of engineering feasibility report, that there's some other data points that we want to incorporate. And what I'd like to suggest is that where we're thinking about these other data points, whether it's um, around the market and developers, or whether it's around making sure that we haven't narrowed our data to exclude people who speak Spanish, or that the survey has not reached other Black and Brown folks in the community. I'm thinking that maybe instead of pausing this process here and going back to get more data on this survey, we think about where are the other community data points we need to have in this process. I know Fred and Chris and I discussed that somewhere between an RFP draft, um, and now that there might be a need for another kind of public hearings place where the Affordable Housing Trust has done some work and has a sense of what direction we want to go in, and we're seeking feedback on that to before we roll all of that into the RFP. But that's what I'd suggest with like thinking of the additional data we want in terms of where does that fit in a process that keeps us moving forward? Does that
Yeah, we can move in parallel.
yeah, does that sound right? And if that sounds right to you all, can we give this back to the committee that's been working on it and ask the subcommittee to come back to us, probably not next month, probably the month after, with kind of a
Draft,
draft process and timeline?
Sure.
draft process. Yeah.
And Garfield, does that like, do you think it's really important that this exact survey that we've gone back on this exact survey and we're releasing it in Spanish and double checking that it's gotten to other marginalized folks, or does it feel appropriate to look at the places moving forward where we're going to collect data and make sure we're building that in a more explicit way?
That would suit me fine as long as, like you said, we're getting in a more explicit way. I think right now, I think it's we should be obviously trying to incorporate this into the Black and Brown community because we've already stated it. I don't think we can not include it, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
and I do want to just clarify that while we know we have not collected data in Spanish, we just don't know who the demographics are, the racial demographics are of the folks who've responded to this. So I think that's part of like the moving forward in order for us to know we're getting a good cross section of the community. Um,
Is it
that
illegal to ask the question like you see a lot of times? Do you identify it, like even on whatever forms, um, Black, Hispanic, um, uh, African American, Native Indian? I don't know if we have to go all that, but I think you understand what I mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
Good.
And I think I'm not sure, but I think it went out through Vim, but it was not in Spanish.
yeah.
So we could fix that. But I think it would be worthwhile to have like a sort of a draft RFP of some kind so that people have some idea what we have in mind and then take feedback on that.
Very quickly.
Mhm.
Garfield, you had talked earlier about wanting people to have an image or something that they could react to. And I think that's what Bill's suggesting there is if we start with some sort of a draft RFP I used the word parameters before, kind of like a rough idea of what's there. Maybe, I guess what I'm trying to say is rather than try to get more data out of this survey, I think we've gone as far as we
Yeah.
can with that. Maybe it's the next phase,
Yeah.
whether that's a community meeting, whether that's an additional refined survey that
Yeah.
reacts to something.
Yeah,
So I think that
I,
that's where we are on this, and I do want to move us along because I know everybody likes to stop at 8, and to stop at 8, we have to do some other work.
Okay.
So the Fred and Bill, and you're going to go back and with Jen and look at process
yeah,
and timeline, and if we can get to that in March, great.
Yeah, and
I just think it will depend on if we have responses to the RFP that's out there now. Fred,
um, I'd
we
like to, I'm just one really briefly. I'd like to ask if I could take the Risingdale report that was shared and sort of add the data, the graph data, and freeze that or like
Sure.
publish it for that date. I want to finish that.
yeah. I, I don't see why not.
Okay. Do we need to? Yeah, go ahead.
All
I
right.
will do that. I will add the graphs.
All right. So the next step is where it's all going back to the subcommittee. This subcommittee is going to come back to the Affordable Housing Trust with some
April.
process outline and timeline with that process
Okay.
based on our conversation tonight. Thank you. Our
Okay.
next agenda item is the ADU program. And our goal tonight is to review and update the program overview and rubric so that is ready to go to a subcontractor. Fred and Chris and I are still working on the subcontractor side of things. But the goal is to be able to open applications as soon as possible. If we don't have a subcontractor on board, we won't be able to open them next month, which means we won't be able to close the application window until into the new fiscal year, which isn't great, but at least like it gets us moving. That's the goal, is to be able to close the applications at the end of June at the latest, but we'll just have to see. So if folks could bring out whatever way you did your homework on this, and we'll start with the program overview. And what I'm going to do is just have us go around, and when it is your turn, your job is to identify where you have proposed changes in one of the documents we're looking at, which is either the rubric or the overview. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
All right. Bill, let's start with.
Yes. Well, I have a sort of a concern about the people that are building the ADU, and how much weight we need to give to, is that going to help them meet their expenses living in Great Barrington?
So
Uh,
so you're discussing applicant criteria on
Yeah.
page 1.
Yeah.
Would you like to change? Are you proposing a change?
I'm proposing that we give that less weight, because
You want to keep it the same, but you want to change how it's scored in the rubric?
exactly.
And what is the proposed change to the rubric you are?
Just to give that a lot less weight. It's not absolutely necessary that it helps someone out in terms of maintaining their residence in Great Barrington. And the reason for that is that it's really hard to make the numbers work on this project. And I think,
So what would you change about the rubric then?
I don't know, Give me a minute and come back to me.
Okay. I'm going to move on to Peter. Do you have any changes you'd like to make to this program? And if
I,
so, express
I,
them in concrete changes proposed to documents.
I do. Can we mute Fred for a moment while I say this? Um, it does. I think the rubric needs to acknowledge that there may be an opportunity to enhance the group of individuals that can live in this, because the way it's now set up, it's the ceiling is 100% AMI, and there may be a change. So I think we need to acknowledge that there can be an expansion.
This would be governed by the same rules Chris just mentioned.
Not necessarily. Um, uh, and I'm not, and I'm going to research after this whether, I think Chris is right about everything, so I have no reason to believe he's not right about this. Um, but my reading of the Affordable Homes Act is that it actually would permit an expansion for this project.
So let me ask this, is there any um what is the likelihood that that change
As of May 2nd, it's going to the select board on March 13th. The select board can put it on the town warrant for the May 2nd hearing. And at that point, if it is indeed approved, uh, and we could change the rubric. Again, I'm very concerned about municipal workers and other individuals for the town that that earn too much to live at 100% in this housing at 100% AMI, but could at the 250 level or in between.
So I part of what I would say is I don't looking at the rubric, I don't think it's the rubric that would change. I think it would be in the document itself, the program description itself
Well,
that caps the AMI at 100%.
I'm looking at the assessment criteria for about affordability AMI, which says that there's a restriction of 100% of AMI.
Great.
I think the rubric could change to say, um, uh, in the event that, or contingent upon an adoption of a seasonal community designation, the affordability AMI could be enhanced to as much as 250%.
So the second part of what I was going to bring up related to that is that regardless of that, what is true at the time the person is building this, at the time this RFP is released, that will not be the rules. And and when they are submitting their sorry, I said the wrong thing. At the time the application window is open, and when they're submitting their application, they are required at that point to be able to put together their financial picture for the project. So I'm just wondering, process wise, if that has to be something we do in the next round.
Now I need to defer to Chris.
I don't think we need to answer that at the moment. In general, CPA rules go with CPA funds unless the CPA Act is amended. Happy to have that discussion with Peter. For the ADU program, this body could consider putting different funds into that program.
I don't think we have enough of the different funds to fund
Yeah,
what
just a suggestion. And I'm sure there's a way if you wanted to consider the higher income level, I'm sure there's a way somebody could wordsmith the documents to incorporate that possibility.
And I'm going to make one last comment, and I promise to be quiet. The reason we might want to acknowledge that in the RFP is that it's chumming the water. If somebody has an opportunity to construct and they see that it's very difficult to build anything at 100% AMI without losing your shirt, it might attract entities interested in this where there's a greater upside. And I'll stop.
I mean, my thought is that for the purposes of tonight, that for this cycle right now on the timeline we're on, we can't make the change. However, if it turns out that the process of finding the subcontractor we want to work with slows our end of the process enough to bring us into sync with town meeting, then I think we go back to this discussion.
Okay.
Because it does seem relevant regardless of how where anybody falls on the issue. It seems relevant to the feedback we were getting around Risingdale, and the general concerns about how do we house town employees, etc. And it's worth looking at.
That's fair.
Bill, do you have?
Yeah, so number 4 on the rubric, the resident landlord financial need. I'd almost say just eliminate that.
Oh
Oh,
boy. Oh boy.
all right. So, does anybody want to make a motion to eliminate the requirement? This would be on the rubric and it would be in the program description itself to it would be removing goal 3 and removing the resident
Can
land
we go?
financial need. Is there anybody who would like to make that motion or second it?
I was hoping that we would go through all the comments before having any motions and changes.
Well, I think that we should just see if this is viable, let's discuss it. If it's not viable, let's move on. So is there a motion and a second?
I move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
Fred?
I vehemently object to this. I think that this should be given much more weight. I think I must have a very different concept of what the IDU program is. I think that the ADU program needs to help people not just to create, but creating new affordable rental units, but also people who can benefit from having a rental in their home going forward. I think that this should be given a lot more weight than it is. When we get back to my other comments, I'll talk about it, but I'll talk about some of the other things that I want to say. I think that regarding this and what Peter was talking about, and I'll just throw this in briefly in this context, is I think that there's a different concept of what we're looking for. I don't think that we can solve everybody's problems of housing in this town. We have a very limited resource there, and I think we should decide as a body where we should aim this program. I also point out to you that this is a program that's going to work in parallel or hopefully in consort with the RFP program. If you want to build that big apartment, like the award that we gave to the Carlettis in Housatonic, you go into the other program. You go into the RFP program. This ADU program has a very specific, more limited, more focused window.
Other discussion?
I just felt it was limiting, and it's a very small window of people that are going to qualify for this. That's my concern.
My comments would be, Fred, I agree with you that I think that this this is a distinguishing feature of the ADU program from the developer RFP, and that the developer RFP allows the outlet for what you're looking for, Bill. The second thing I would raise is that the way the scoring actually works does not prevent somebody with limited financial need from receiving these funds, which is actually what happened in the last round. So somebody what happened in the last round was somebody scored poorly on number 4 in the rubric, the resident landlord financial need, but scored very well on the rest of the rubric. So I am pretty comfortable at this point in the process with sticking with a system that allows for that kind of balancing overall, while we're still articulating that this is a core goal of the program. If we continue to see that the program is never working for anybody who scores high in that in number 4, then I agree. Like, why are we doing this separately? Like, we might not need an ADU program at all. But that's what I would add to the discussion. Joe?
So is the proposal, are there two parts? One is about um the 100% AMI requirement for the resident homeowners, and the other one is about criterion criterion 4.
Yes, those two things are tied together. That criterion 4 is an expression of the the third bullet of the ADU purpose on page, I think it's page 1 of the program description.
I mean, what I would vote for is to get rid of the 100% AMI requirement, but keep 4.
I'm sorry, when you say to get rid of the 100% AMI requirement, can you clarify?
For the resident homeowner to
There,
allow the
there
so
isn't 100% AMI
Yeah.
requirement for the resident homeowner.
oh, it says including those incomes over. Okay, so there's no requirement.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, I got it.
Any further discussion before we vote? All right, roll call vote, Fred. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No.
I'm a little. What do we vote? I thought we were going all around the room before we voted or anything. No.
There's a motion on the table to remove
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
the requirement for the resident landlord to be scored on financial need. Bill,
I'm going to reconsider.
you're totally allowed. What does that mean for your vote?
Means I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Peter,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Joe, did you vote?
No,
And your vote is?
no. My vote is no.
Okay. Garfield?
My vote's no.
And my vote is no.
So I would like to offer a motion to simply remove the box that says no financial need, just to make it a dash through it.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
So on line 4, where it says fails eligibility, are we saying that
I see.
it will fail eligibility if there's no financial need, right?
Oh, no, sorry. If you scroll to the top, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I can't share my screen right now. If you scroll to the top of page 1 of the rubric.
Yeah.
Oh, I know why. It's because Chris came in as a co-host. Sorry.
The top row is just a set of eligibility requirements. The second row down is the assessment criteria. And so that set of headers is what applies to the columns below them. So what you're looking at, Fred, Joe, is in row 4, that row that's labeled number 4, resident landlord financial need, where it says no financial need, that would just be scored as weak. It would be scored as the weakest.
All right, then. Yeah, I was interpreting it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Bill, did you have anything else that you wanted to change?
No, that was really it.
Okay. Garfield, what do you have?
I have a couple things, I guess. One on the for the ADUs, the lien for indebtedness.
Yeah.
I think we should take out may and say will.
I just have to catch up to you in my version of the document. And we think that maybe I can share now.
Yes, I hope so.
It would help.
Can you?
I think that I don't know there's something happening on my end where I'm not able to, it's not giving me options when I go to share. So,
And Ananda has never shared well with others.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an oldest child and my younger siblings came along much later. All right. So under lien so this is in the program overview. If you scroll down, this should have page numbers and it doesn't. If you scroll down to item 4, loan program structure and administration, Garfield, you're referring to the third bullet that says lien for indebtedness.
Yes, I am.
And you're saying the loan and documents may include a statement of lien, and you'd like that change to will.
Will.
Are there any objections to that? And Chris, I particularly want to make sure we're getting this right because you've gone through all these documents now.
Read that statement again because I'm not looking at it in front of me.
The loan documents may include a statement of lien or similar document as evidence of the loan and to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds at the time of the initial disbursement. And Garfield would like to change the initial may to will.
I think that's appropriate. Definitely should. And I think we had a second mortgage and promissory note on the last one.
Yes, we do.
So that's appropriate, I think.
All right. What else, Garfield?
The accessibility line, also in the ADU. I'm asking for an explanation for myself. What are we considering straightforward language?
Do you recall what you're talking about? Okay, so this is under number
This is
7.
the accessibility. Yeah.
And selection, and it says the application, bullet 1, accessibility. To the extent possible, the application form program information documents will use straightforward language to describe the program and the evaluation process.
I want to know what straightforward language will entail or is or whatever.
Do you have?
I do not. I don't have the straightforward language. I just have the question.
Yeah. So our options are either we can define that in this document, or we can ask to review. Like we can ask the subcontractor to provide the application form and program information to us to review and determine at that point if the language is straightforward. Or we can empower Chris to be the arbiter of straightforward language in the work of the subcontractor.
I'm not sure if that answers my question. That doesn't tell me. So we don't know exactly what straightforward talk is going to be at this point, or we do, because you're saying that we're going to employ him to have him say that. But I'd like to know if someone was talking to me, what do you mean you're giving me straightforward language? What does that mean? It could be.
And I can tell you the intention, but so the intention is applications are often really hard to understand for just the everyday person. And the intention is that when we hand this to a subcontractor, we're telling them, make this really easy to understand.
Okay.
So we can either try to define that in this document, or we can tell the subcontractor, bring us the application that you created. We're going to review it and decide if it's straightforward enough. Or we can say, we believe Chris is in a good position to give feedback to the subcontractor on straightforwardness.
Okay.
So is there a proposal for how you'd like us to deal with what straightforward, how to determine if something is straightforward?
Geez, I don't, other than the fact that I think it should be understood by a reasonable person. How's that?
Great. So why don't we could just add to that bullet, straightforward it means will be understood by a reasonable person.
That's kind of like isn't that like a law term there, Peter, or or some term that encompasses
I think
you
that's
have
what
to
we're
be a
trying to
reasonable.
avoid, Garfield.
I
Well,
think
but I still think you would need. I still think it's important. I still think it needs to be stated. I guess.
Okay, so are people okay with me adding a second sentence, that bullet that says straightforward means the language can be easily understood by a reasonable person?
That makes me happy. I don't know about anyone else, but
I'm good with
it's
that.
not a big stretch or a big move. Actually, it's just kind
Yeah,
of like a normal thing myself. But
or
it's
forever.
one vote. So.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay, great. And Garfield, did you have anything else?
I do, and this is probably gonna. I'll just spit it out. I'll be honest with you. I've never been a big proponent of the ADU. The reason being, I think we spent about 3 years on this at the very least, and we're still pretty much in the beginning stages after 3 years. And I know at one point in the AGU section that if no applicants are chosen, then the money will go back in. But is it true? Or am I wrong that no one's beaten down the door? And no one seems to come up and made any offers of, sure, I'd love to do that. So I don't know if we're spinning. This is my question. That's my wondering if we could be using our time better.
I've had several inquiries.
Great.
Good.
All right. Joe, do you have proposed changes?
No. You
Great.
hear me?
I did. Thank you. Peter, do you have proposed changes?
no.
Fred, do you have proposed changes?
I have a few comments, if you'll entertain those in the next couple minutes. Um, I think that we could learn a lot by the way Construct applied the rubric. They basically used it as a 1 or a 5 scoring thing. There were nothing that they used in the weak, moderate, or somewhat strong criteria, and I think we could learn from that. I do think I think that I have a different concept of what this program can and should be. As I said before, I've already got my comments out there, so I won't repeat them, but I do think that there's a window for this. And having said that, I think that perhaps we should limit the grant size. We don't have infinite resources going forward. I think we had like 230,000 or something in the line item for this. And my proposal is that we limit the grant to a maximum of 100,000, or I'm sorry, it's a forgivable loan. Um, my proposal is that we limit it to $100,000 because, and my theory is we're simply trying to leverage other funds. We're not trying to pay for a whole ADU out of this bucket of money, but rather to provide an incentive and allow somebody to go out. Maybe they get a second mortgage against the future income or whatnot. And I would say that we want to limit this to 100,000 is my, but only so that we can extend the number of grants that we possibly can make. Um, I also was thinking if that should be a percentage of the construction budget. So if the construction budget was $250,000, we limit it to a percentage of either 100,000 or no more than 50% of the construction budget. But I'm not sure how I feel about that.
This
Um,
this falls in section 6 with the header budget line of the program overview. So this section currently refers to the pilot program. Do we want to continue calling this a pilot program? And then it does need to be updated. So the proposal on the table is to make the total available for disbursements 100,000. That is in line with what we have budgeted. So unless
Wait, the total disbursements or a single loan?
the total available in our budget as we've currently budgeted is 100,000 is available for disbursement. This is just the total pot. So I'm going to update that unless anybody objects. Then further down in the fourth bullet, it says no single loan may exceed $100,000. Do you want to change that, Fred?
Oh, I do not. I mean, having listened to Bill and others talk about how expensive it is to build these sorts of things, I, I have thought about making it only $50,000, but I'm not so sure that that's going to be effective. I do think that conceptually we need to make this an incentive that opens up the ability for somebody to get a second mortgage to build this, which they can pay back over time with the rental income. I think that there's a cash flow model that can be developed in that way. As I said earlier in my response to Peter's proposal or Bill's proposal, if the ADU program doesn't fit, you can go into the RFD program. You can go into the other program that we have, like the Carlettis, if you're building a new apartment. What was it? So and since I have the floor, I just want to reiterate, I believe that the financial need is an important criteria. I am not making a proposal to change the weight of it, but I'm just recognizing that the concept that I have for the ADU program highlights that aspect of it. And I'm done.
Okay, thank you. And did you have any other proposed changes?
In the last month, I've thought of a lot of them and I've rejected most of them. And I think that given that we have the documents that support this, the best path forward is, and as Garfield pointed out, we did spend some time working on this. It's a pretty expansive document, and I'm comfortable with the way it is right now.
Great. The only thing I have to bring to the table is in section 6, the budget line section. In our previous iteration, in our previous release of this, we had allocated $5,000 to fund the administrative costs, and that's still reflected in this document. What I'd like to propose is that we not finalize that tonight, and that Fred and Chris and I continue working on the possibility of for subcontractor options, and then come back to you next month with just that one item to finalize based on what we think the actual costs need to be for this round. Based on the conversation and the preliminary research work Fred had done, I suspect that we may be able to have what we need at this or under this amount. Garfield?
Just to throw a little fuel, fire on the fuel. At one point in the AGU, we do say if no applicants or whatever, the money will go back.
Yeah.
Do we have a timeline? And am I correct that we have been working on this for about 3 years?
Yeah. So
in another 2 sounds like plenty, man. 5 years, nothing shaking. That's my opinion. We should use our monies or energy. I see that grin you have there, Ananda, but I can't. I gotta be me. Don't make me start singing that song. But I do think, how much time are you going to spend? Yeah, I don't want to turn this into an HWW. We were working on this for ever without a solution.
I share your frustration with the timeline. However, I would look at it like this. We've invested, I think, like 18 months on the front end before we released the first RFP. And while that was a long and sometimes frustrating process, we not only got the ADU pilot out of it, we really got the basis for the rubric that allowed us to also revise the developer RFP. And what I envision moving forward is that we, either we find out this program doesn't work and then we just stop, or we can tighten up the process where after we've done a full cycle, we review how it went, and then we quickly do any edits. But we did make a grant, and somebody is now living in that ADU, right, Chris? Yeah. So we haven't made no progress. An ADU
Okay.
has been built and somebody is housed.
Okay.
So if that works for everybody, we will move on to the last parts of our meeting. All right. So that brings us to trustees speak. Peter.
A few points. Our close sister town of Egremont has, as I think, is the first town to have proceeded with the affordable housing property tax exemption. And they received 7 applications and approved 6. And they have, from free cash, spent only $9,800, a little more than that, to assist in the development of affordable housing. I know that we sent this back to the select board recently. I think when we didn't get any traction in 2025, it was because I think we were looking for 100 or 150,000. I don't remember the amount. It turns out you don't need a lot of money to make an affordable housing difference. And I think we might learn a little from Egremont.
That's great.
I also wanted, not for tonight, but for in the future, I'm wondering if we could consider the fact that there are a number of towns in Massachusetts that have used the income stream, the future income stream from CPA funding to issue CPA-backed bonds. I think we're going to find that the development of housing in Great Barrington is inordinately expensive, and we might be able to foster development by actually issuing general obligation bonds based on CPA revenue stream. This is a big thing to discuss at the end of a meeting, something to
Yeah.
consider, something to
Put it
consider.
on the advocacy items list, and Fred and I will look for a future agenda.
Okay. And if there ends up being a subcommittee, I would be happy to join anyone who's interested in possibly pursuing this. Next, I wanted to say that I've twice been to ZBA meetings where at the top of the meeting, the lengthy paragraph wasn't read. We haven't been sued. Everyone has attended the meeting. We probably don't need to read that any longer. And last, I can't attend the March 17th meeting because there's a ZBA meeting that same night. If there's going to be a quorum problem, I'm mentioning that now.
Great, thank you. I have been instructed by the chair of the select board to read the introduction. Any other trustees speak?
I hope not.
All right, citizens speak.
There are no hands.
Okay, media time.
No hands.
All right. By unanimous consent, we will be adjourned